Okay, good morning, almost good afternoon. My name is Priscilla Lopez. I'm the Associate Dean for Economic and Workforce Development. Welcome to the LA Harbor College College to Career Global Trade and Logistics Industry Spotlight event. The College to Career Industry Spotlight events bring professionals, politicians, faculty, and students together to recognize the importance of high growth, high wage industry sectors in our regional economy. Each quarterly event is designed to educate, engage, and excite stakeholders into sparkling new relationships and collaborative efforts. Our intent is to offer an intimate environment that fosters knowledge, sharing, and networking around key industry experts and sectors. In honor of National World Trade Week, which is this month, for the month of May, we are recognizing the pivotal role of global trade in transportation plays in our economy. It only seemed appropriate to select global trade logistics as our first industry spotlight. So today this is the Reaching New Heights and Markets that is going to be provided by Leticia Arias, our International Trade Specialist from the U.S. Commercial Service. And just a little background about Leticia. She and I have known each other for over a decade. We worked together as colleagues in my days at Long Beach City College for the Center for International Trade. Helped a lot of companies together to open new markets and to begin exporting. So she is a trade specialist for the U.S. Commercial Service, U.S. Department of Commerce, which is based out of their West Los Angeles office. And she provides export counseling to companies in the automotive and transportation sectors, cosmetology, personal care, environmental technologies, sporting goods, and recreation equipment industries. So she's very busy. She's got a diverse background there. She graduated from Harvard College with a degree in political science. She studied Italian in Siena, Italy, and speaks Italian and Spanish. Leticia holds a professional designation of Certified International Credit Professional from FCIB and is a Certified Global Business Professional through NASBITE. Leticia is a Los Angeles native and lives with her husband and twin 3-year-old girls in San Pedro. So please welcome Leticia Arias.
Priscilla, how long? Okay, perfect. Hello, everybody. Glad to see so many faces here, almost a full room. So as Priscilla said, I work with the U.S. Commercial Service. We're the export promotion agency for the federal government. There we go. And I've been with the Commercial Service for 16 and a half years. When I initially started, I thought, okay, let me give this a try for 2-3 years and let's see how I like it. But I've really come to appreciate not only how much I enjoy my job every day, but it can be a very fulfilling job because you really see how a company will go from perhaps no exports or very few exports, really struggling with their exports, to suddenly finding themselves, selling in a dozen countries and 40 countries. So there's a great sense of satisfaction that comes with that. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. I'd like to get a quick sense from the audience as to, I'm assuming that most of you are students. Most of you probably have jobs outside of school. I'm wondering, I've met a few students outside at the tables whose job actually entails some aspects of, importing products, exporting products. Does anybody here, by show of hand, work at that type of job by any chance? What do you do, or what does your work do?
Warehousing.
Okay.
And we sell products to China, and we package and everything.
Okay.
Export over there.
And ship them out. What types of products?
Essential oils most of the time.
Oh, great.
And other time it's just like different gifts about like tablets or iPhones for the customers.
Okay. Oh, great. Very good. Anybody else? No? Okay. also wondering what majors or minors might be represented in the room. Do we have, are most of you doing some type of business or business? Okay, any other hands? Marketing, finance. So if I could, I'm going to start pointing at people. Like so what is your major?
Computer engineering.
Okay. Why are you here today? Like, were you asked to by a teacher? Yes. Okay, that's fine. And yourself?
Engineering and electrical engineering.
Okay, so the computer engineering teacher did a very good job. How about you? Mm-hmm. Psychology. Okay. Was there, like, were you expected to be here, or was there an interest? Yeah, in drafting? Okay, very interesting. How about yourself?
Currently undecided between accounting and more of like an operations supply chain.
Okay.
So I'm here to really kind of get a better sense of the industry.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, I know I would say 90% of the people I work with came from an international business, international finance, international marketing type of background. They weren't surprised to find themselves in this job, to say the least. Whereas I focused on political science, political theory, and really had no idea what to expect to be doing after college. I went to Italy as a nanny because I was just trying to prolong having to decide what to do after college. And it was very much by chance that I fell into this. When I returned back home after having been a nanny, I was kind of like, okay, well, what am I going to do? And I was just like facing a blank slate, and which can be a very positive thing sometimes, but just also like facing a brick wall. You're not really sure why to decide to do one thing or another. But at the time, I decided to take an introduction to international business class at UCLA Extension, and the class didn't meet at UCLA. It met in downtown LA at the World Trade Center building. And literally one evening, as I was running through the corridors to class, there was a networking event taking place in the lobby, and it was international trade related, and I ran through just picking up business cards on all the exhibit tables. And later on, it was like over Thanksgiving break, I decided to write to all of them asking if they needed a research assistant, anything like that. And then 2 weeks later, I started calling everybody, and nobody needed anybody, or at least I wasn't, anything that I could offer, it seemed. And literally the last one that I called was the World Trade Center Association. W was the last one on my list. And they were in the process of planning this big 2-day conference in June. This is in November, and this was, they were planning this big conference around what at the time was called the Free Trade Area of the Americas, which didn't have a very long lifespan as a trade agreement that was being considered. But I came on board as an intern to assist the planner they had hired to identify topics that were relevant to the Free Trade Area of the Americas conversation and prospective speakers, and then start reaching out to them to see if they were interested in coming to our event, and then of course marketing the event to businesses. And it was by being involved with the World Trade Center Association in that aspect that I then ended up being hired to run some of their trade-related programs, like their breakfasts and monthly mixers. And then several months later, when their membership services manager retired, I applied for and got that position. And as the membership services manager, I worked with the World Trade Center Association members to help them import and export, and became very close with the U.S. Commercial Service office that was in our building in the World Trade Center, and gained a strong appreciation for the resources that they had available through the market research that their overseas offices produced. So at the U.S. Commercial Service, I think I had hit space too many times here. So at the U.S. Commercial Service, we assist U.S. businesses that manufacture within the U.S. or service providers based in the U.S. to find importers for their products or buyers for their services in other countries. The idea being that there are more people outside of the U.S. who can pay for these goods and services so they can expand, they can grow their business without necessarily moving outside of the U.S. They can increase the gain economies of scale by just producing more of what they currently produce and exporting it overseas. There we go. So as I was saying, with the World Trade Center Association, I found myself looking to the U.S. Commercial Service more and more to be able to obtain information to help our members get overseas. Given that the Commercial Service has a mission to promote predominantly the services and goods of small and medium-sized U.S. businesses, which the definition for that to us is any business that has fewer than 500 employees. While that is still a sizable company, I would add that most of the companies that I and my local colleagues work with are more around the size of 10 employees, somewhere between 5 and 20 employees. So we really do work with very small companies most of the time. There are a variety of ways that we help companies go overseas. So we offer trade counseling, and that means I'll sit with a company to discuss what their export history has been, figure out if any challenges that they've had, or perhaps they've had no export history, and we'll figure out which markets or what next steps would make sense for them in order to start gaining some access into overseas markets. And one of the ways we narrow down which countries they might go to is through the market intelligence that we are able to come up with via our overseas offices. So we're represented in about 80 countries. We're present usually at U.S. embassies and consulates overseas. And my colleagues who are overseas are the ones who actually identify importers, distributors, partners for U.S. businesses. And they're the ones who will help a U.S. company figure out how to comply with local regulations that their products have to meet in order to get into a country. So for example, the cars that we drive, or like I cover sporting goods, a lot of these products that have a lot of safety measures to them, another country might have a different set of regulations as to how to prove that a product is safe for consumer use before it can be sold within that market. And those safety measures and regulations are sometimes different from the regulations that exist in the US. So a company might have gone through meeting all of these measures to sell their product in the US, but they might have to do some additional testing or even adapt their product slightly in order to sell it into another market. So our offices can help a company figure out exactly what those are. Some of the compliance measures might be a little easier, like just adding a different language to a manual that is sold with a product, or for cosmetics products, let's say, adding a different language to the packaging so that a consumer can see what the ingredients are in that item and application of the product. There are also usually requirements to have information about who the importer is for a product, so that if a consumer encounters any issue, they know who they can contact to inform them that there's an issue, and then that importer would work with, depending on what the problem is, that importer would need to figure out how to remedy the situation. So, as I was saying, business matchmaking. We also do commercial diplomacy. So there are some larger corporations that will bid on a project, let's say an infrastructure project, or a project with the Ministry of Defense or with the Ministry of Education in another country. And companies have to go through a bidding process for these types of opportunities. And our overseas office can help, can take a role in advocating on behalf of that U.S. business to increase the chances that that U.S. business is being considered on an equal playing field as other businesses, be it domestic businesses to where the opportunity exists, or competing businesses from other countries. And we recently added a new segment to our portfolio of what we cover, and that's foreign direct investment into the U.S. So that would include companies from overseas purchasing property, building buildings locally, and we see a lot of that happening in Los Angeles. And it would also include an international company purchasing a U.S. company, which is we see that happen all the time in every direction, either U.S. companies buying other U.S. companies buying overseas companies, and overseas companies buying U.S. companies. It's sometimes the most strategic way for a company to acquire new technologies that perhaps a smaller company has developed without the buying company having to spend the time in research and development to develop a competing technology. If anything I say is, if you'd like any clarification, just let me know. So why we do this? So why is the U.S. government interested in having myself and my colleagues do this? Why are tax dollars being spent to have us do this? 95% of the population, this isn't, sorry, I skipped a slide here. I really covered most of what's on this slide already, so I'm going to go to the next one. So again, why we are doing this. 95% of the world's population lies outside of the U.S. So I think that's a pretty, it gives you a visual as to why it would be important for a U.S. business to look beyond the U.S. border. While 5% of the population approximately is within the U.S., because we're such a developed country, there's a very high level of competition for most products within the U.S. We kind of have access for everything. So sometimes it can be very difficult for a new company to compete within the U.S., even though this might be their domestic market, and it might seem like the most obvious thing to do is to try and fully develop the U.S. market before exploring overseas. That may not necessarily be the case. So it makes sense to think about when it's time to go overseas at various stages of your business, not necessarily wait until you've fully explored all 50 states, because you may be missing easier opportunities by doing that. So money-wise, 70% of spending power is outside of the U.S. So again, that's a very obvious visual as to why it would make sense to look outside as well. But when you look at the stage of development of different countries, of different economies, most developed countries are growing at slower rates than newer economies, than developing economies. So you have more, you have just have different types of needs in different countries depending on where they are in their developmental stages. So it makes sense to look, like earlier, Nando Guerra, I don't know if anybody heard him speak, he was talking about how it's important to not just learn, let's say, logistics and how to import-export, but to also understand the geopolitical situations of the world. And this kind of touches on that, where it's important to understand what's going on in different countries, culturally and economically, to analyze where it makes sense to look into exporting your product. One of the things that I've been doing at my work for the last year approximately is I've been starting to participate in some of the local conversations with regard to advanced transportation, autonomous vehicles, and also what we call smart cities, which is the increased efficient use of technology in order to improve our daily commutes, our access to healthcare, our access to information. And what you find is that in many developing countries, businesses, governments are leaping over a lot of the processes that developed countries went through in order to get to a certain place. So you have parts of the world where telephones, like landline telephones, were never really part of the picture because it wasn't feasible to get landlines everywhere. Then all of a sudden, when cell phones became more affordable, everybody leaped directly to cell phones. So they kind of skipped the landline stage, and that's what I'm referring to. You have a lot of places where you might be surprised that they're using certain types of technology that are maybe novel here, but it's because they completely leaped over more traditional types of technology, and it didn't make sense for them to go back and install that type of technology, thinking that was a necessary step before they got to a more advanced technology. And that's why another country might be ready for a new technology before a community in the United States is ready for it. So when you look at statistics about exporters, what we find is only about 1% of US firms actually export, and of those, the majority only export to one country. And some of the reasons for this could be because of the risks associated with exporting, and there are several. There are additional costs, there are new business processes that need to be taken into consideration, and there are regulatory environments possibly in every different country that you would have to take into consideration and adapt to or comply with. But when you think about it, even if you were, let's say, already doing business in California, and you're thinking about expanding to other states in the United States, you're also looking at a lot of additional risks. So it's a matter of studying what those risks are and learning how to manage those risks. And at the U.S. Commercial Service, one of the things we do is help companies assess those risks and learn how to manage those risks. So how do companies work with us? Really, it's just a matter of, we go out and we speak at events. Oftentimes it's word of mouth, where one of the companies we work with will be speaking with another colleague who has a different type of business, and they'll say, I talked to the U.S. Commercial Service, and then they'll put us in touch with each other. So it's as easy as just contacting us. As Priscilla mentioned earlier, I handle a few industry sectors in LA County, and I'm one of about 10 trade specialists in LA. So each of my colleagues handles a different cluster of sectors. And by focusing on specific clusters, we've kind of learned what some of the common challenges and even opportunities are for those sectors. And I'd like to mention, given that the audience is primarily students, all of our offices offer internship opportunities. I'm happy to say all of our interns have been really thrilled with their time in our office. So we have a West LA office, which is where I am. We have a downtown Los Angeles office. We have an Irvine office, an office in Ontario, and Ventura. Those are, I think, all of our local regional offices. Time-wise, should I stop now?
Thank you.
Sure.